One of the things that I'm sure you've been asked about several times is the workplace culture at SAS, and Zager talked about that previously. I'd like to note that hundreds of students from Melbourne Business School learn about the culture at SAS. My colleagues here, Isabel and Ian Williamson, teach how SAS has set up their workplace culture. In fact, there is a class going on right now with 80 students who are learning organizational behavior, and in fact, they will be talking about the SAS case next week. So there is quite a bit of excitement amongst our student population, and in fact, several of our alumni would have actually talked about the SAS case in their courses. So what I want to talk about is, what I want you to talk about is the genesis of this workplace culture. Was it always like this from the start?
Yes, it was.
And how did you, so what are the sorts of...
I love yes or no answers. Then they don't know what to say next. You know?
I was warned about this. So I am a bit prepared for it. So let me turn the question around. What do you do as the CEO of the company to foster this culture?
Well, I've always had a philosophy that if you treat people like they make a difference, then they will make a difference. It's sort of a golden rule kind of thing, you know. It does work. You've got to have respect for the people that work for you. Now, we started out as one of the early knowledge companies. Software all comes out of the brains of the people that work there, and so you want to find ways to encourage people to be innovative. We believe in, you know, very nice surroundings. We don't work out of a garage or a warehouse or anything like that. We work out of very nice private offices. Everybody's got flex hours. They can come and go, you know, between certain hours. Very, very liberal benefits programs. You know, health care, vacations, sick leave. All of that stuff is some of the most generous in the industry. But it has helped us retain people with around a 4% turnover. And only about half of that is voluntary. The other 2% is people are being asked to leave.
So what do you do walking around the campus that makes people feel so loyal to the company that they work for? I spent a bit of time, 2 days on your campus,
right,
about 10 days ago, and it was quite stunning to see how much people loved working for SAS.
Right.
So what do you do?
Well, they recognize strangers and visitors, and they've been taught. So if you have a visitor's badge on, they know what to say.
I don't think that was all it was. So what sorts of things do you, I mean, so what do you do as a CEO when you walk around campus? You know, what is it that makes people excited about working with SAS?
One of my favorite questions when I'm walking around SAS is, what are you doing? It's a great thing. You get on the elevator and someone else gets on. Oh, what are you working on these days? And you find out what they're working on. And sometimes you go back to your office and call their manager. I can't believe you're working on this. This is ridiculous. Or sometimes you call a meeting to find out more and pump revenue into it and support. One of the things we do is the senior executives look at at least 1 or 2 demos every week. Tuesday at 2 o'clock is standard on all of our schedules, and we show up for about an hour, and people from R&D will come over and show us what they're working on. Some projects again get added staffing. Some are slowed down and things moved somewhere else. But it's just an excellent way for people in R&D to be able to present what they're working on, present ideas. Because we're not we're not totally top down. I'd say about half of the things we do is a top down thing, but the other half is a bottom up thing. Ideas come from everywhere. They come from our customers. like our forum that we just had. We talk to customers. We get some of their ideas. We try to provide goods, products, and services that people want. That if you can remember back to the 2000 .com bust, people were developing all sort of products and services that nobody wanted to buy, and pretty soon the new economic model, the new business model is you don't need profits, you just need more and more market share. But profits were irrelevant. Well, that turned out after a while, after billions of venture money was poured into these things, to be a very bad model, and everybody went belly up. So.
Thank you for those insights. I wanted to ask you about Zega mentioned that you have offices in 120 plus countries, which is quite remarkable. People.
No, I think it's only 52.
Is it?
We have 412 offices in 52 countries.
Okay, well, 52 countries is a pretty high number of countries.
Yeah, we have customers in 120.
So one of the questions I wanted to ask is, how do you foster the same unique culture in your employees in those countries? I mean, I've been to the Cary campus. It's quite a remarkable place.
Right.
So, people would feel obviously very energized to be on that campus. But I suspect you don't have the same kind of environment in every country that you have an office in. So what do you do to foster that unique culture in these different offices?
Well, we work with the head of each country, and they, of course, come to Raleigh and or come to Cary and learn about how we do things. Lately, it's gotten even easier with this Best Place to Work thing that goes on every year. We've encouraged our leaders of the various countries to make sure that you're on that list. Being on a Best Place to Work list, it makes recruiting so much easier because people want to work for you. If you were one of the worst companies on the list, probably nobody would want to work for you, right? So this is all the opposite. So everybody does want. And it also helps in retention of employees if you're a great company to work for.
Yeah.
So we've seen this happen around the world, and our HR department works very closely with the HR groups all around the world to foster this desire to be a great place to work.
I'm sure it helps on the retention side as well when somebody feels like, I'm not quite sure what's going on. They say, well, if there's so many people who like working here, obviously I should be liking this place as well.
Yeah,
some of that might be also occurring.
Yes, but the main reason people leave a job or a company is their immediate manager. Guy's a jerk or something. They don't work for him anymore. So we let our employees move fairly frequently. So if they're working for a manager that's a jerk, they can move somewhere else. And if too many people move out from under this manager, we realize he's a jerk and get rid of
him. Dr. Goodnight, I'd like to continue on the workplace culture questions, but it's a somewhat different kind of question. In 2007-08, pretty tough times for business, and I can't imagine that it wasn't somewhat tough for you folks as well. How did you address those tough times? There's something fairly unique that you did that the rest of the industry didn't, so I'd like you to share those thoughts.
Well, it really started, and I think it became apparent in late 2008 that we were headed for a deep recession, really, really deep. No one had ever experienced this in our lifetime. Companies like SAP announced they're going to lay off 3,000 people, and suddenly the rumors start flying around the company that we were as well. But I decided what we should do is make it very clear that we weren't going to have any layoffs. So in early January 2009, I made it very clear, did a worldwide webcast. Webcasts are a great way to communicate with your employees because they hear it directly from the CEO. It's not filtered as it goes down the lines. So, and in the webcast, I made it very clear there would be no layoffs, there would be no raises, and everybody is to cut expenses. And we ended up as a very profitable year that year. We did, and we kept our word. We didn't lay off anybody.
That's quite a remarkable move from your perspective.
Well, being a private company, we don't have to worry about what Wall Street thinks about us. We don't have to worry about, oh, I can't use that line. It's something like we can't have a bunch of 28-year-olds telling us what we're supposed to do, but you've got some of those.
Our 28-year-olds here.
I'm sure they're well prepared. Yeah.
So I actually want to talk about the private company aspect that you just mentioned.
Right.
I think it's a great segue into something that, of course, has been talked about for decades, which is when is SAS going to go public? And in fact, there was a time at which you might have even considered it seriously, yet you decided to stay private.
Right.
And I'd like to understand the thought process behind that decision to stay private.
Well, we didn't need the money. Well, this was back in 2000, right in the heat of the .com stuff. Everybody was saying, we got to go public, but we got to go public. We began looking into it, and of course our financial accountant said that, well, you need to convert off of your SAS software to a financial software that we recognize, and it was Oracle. So oh man, I didn't want to do that. But I finally gave in. I said, okay, go ahead and convert to Oracle. And our financial advisor said, well, when you get that up and running, let us know and we'll go public. Well, it took them over 3 years to get it up and running. Had a perfectly good SAS system for all our accounts receivable and all of our financial accounting, but of course by then the market was shot, so we didn't go. So we didn't. And right now, you ask it like this, like what's wrong with you? 85% in a recent survey of our employees said don't ever go public. They don't want it. They see what happens to public companies under the pressure of Wall Street to lay off anytime it looks like your profits might drop a little bit. You got to lay people off, and that's just something I can't do. I'm not going to run a culture like that.
So the genesis of this decision, I think one of the main reasons is the workplace culture that you'd like to protect.
That's correct. Yeah.
Fantastic. Dr. Goodnight, I'd like to shift the discussion to entrepreneurship. There are many alumni here in the audience who are entrepreneurs. There are, in fact, many of our students who'd like to be entrepreneurs.
Right.
And you've been...
I've never liked that word, by the way. Rhymes with manure.
Not quite sure what word I should use now. You started a company, and many of our students here would like to start a company of their own.
Right.
So what I'd like to understand from you is what sorts of challenges that you faced in the whole journey, and how would you advise them to address those challenges?
Well, I think it's probably a lot easier right now to get into some analytical field or some computer-oriented field. Back in the days when we started, we couldn't buy a computer. They cost several $1 million way back in those days, and the best we could do is rent time from someone who owned a big computer, and it was very expensive. Today, for $500 you're in business. You got your own computer, the software that you need, and off you go. Gosh, right now there's so many opportunities to, just coming up with an app for the iPhone. So, I don't know Jim, how many millions are there right now? About 12 million or something? Or?
It's crazy. More than anybody needs.
Yeah. There's app for everything. So I think there's probably a whole lot more opportunities right now, and there are venture capitalists that will help put up funding if you have a good idea. But we didn't even know what a venture capitalist was back when we started the company. We had to do it on our own.
So did you actually have some events during your journey where you felt like not quite sure where we're going? Because you've had consistent revenue growth, of course,
Right.
but were there some times where you sort of felt like not quite sure where we're going?
No.
No?
No. We've always had the idea where we're going. We've got the next year and a half mapped out what we're going to be working on. We know where we want to be, a year and a half from now. And although there's a lot of interim releases of new products, still the majority of what we're working on is a 1.5, maybe even 2-year project before we can get there. So, but you've got to maintain a flexibility in your schedule so that if something new comes up, some new appliance comes up that you want to run on, and that happened with the iPad. I was sort of poo-pooing this mobile business analysis because it wouldn't fit on your little BlackBerry screen. You couldn't do much at all on that. But then the iPhone came out with a bigger screen, and then when the iPad came out, wow, we got enough real estate now to really do some stuff on that. So we had to just immediately stop several other projects and put a number of people on that project to make sure that our business analytics would show up well on an iPad.
It's quite a remarkable journey. But I'd like to also ask you, you have personally invested in some interesting ventures over a period of time. I think you've invested in a games company, you've invested in an airline.
Yeah.
It would be great to hear your story of those ventures.
Well, I think one of the things that you want to encourage in a company is taking risk, taking chances. You just can't be successful unless you've had some failures. So the gaming company was very interesting. Some of our developers came to us with this idea of what they call video reality, where they took like four shots of everything, and then they would stitch them together so you could pan around. It was way ahead of its technology. I think Google is using that same sort of technology right now. But we started making games, and that little company grew and grew and grew, and finally, when they were when their revenue was $55 million, we decided to get out of the business because their expenses were $85 million. And I'm saying, man, if this gets any bigger, we're going to go broke. So that's and that's one of the secrets of business. You've got to learn when to quit digging a hole. You keep digging and digging and digging. Deep holes cost a lot of money to dig. So that's always been what I tell people. When a hole is deep enough, get out of it. Don't let your pride or your feelings of this has got to be right, get rid of that, and on these big money-losing projects, at some point, pull the plug, accept the loss, move on, start something else. So, yeah, I will never invest in airlines again. So. We had a little airline that that was using our local airport, Raleigh-Durham, as a hub, and they were talking about shutting it down and moving somewhere else. So we stepped in to buy it as a sort of a community service, and that was just we lost some money on that too. But finally, I guess during the 07-08 recession, ridership just plummeted, and they were very highly leveraged, and they just couldn't make it through, and we weren't willing to put any more money into them. So another mistake.
Yeah. So the lesson from these ventures is really to know when to quit, to take risks, but to know when to quit.
I would say so, yes.
Dr. Goodnight, I'd like to shift the discussion to a topic that you're very passionate about, which is education. And you have personally invested in the program at North Carolina State University, which is quite successful. SAS has invested in what we are doing, and that's fantastic. That's at the master's level. And one of the reasons why you, in fact, did invest in these programs was because you understand how much scarcity of talent there is out there.
Right.
In the analytics field. Now, one of the problems that's lurking is the fact that elementary and school education is becoming less and less math-oriented in some senses. It's becoming a little bit dumbed down, if I may use that word. What are you doing, what is SAS doing to address these sorts of issues that are coming up in the world? And in fact, in Australia as well, while we are not as behind as America is, we do have an issue on that front.
Yeah, I think you guys are like 19th PISA and we're like 35 or something. It's unbelievable. I mean, you're behind Vietnam. I mean, it's important that we really need to do a number of things in education. One is to make sure that early childhood, pre-K education is available to all low-income families. Low-income families, quite often single parent, at least in America, is a single parent, fairly uneducated person, and their children are not going to get the home education that other children have. The mom's not going to be asking, what color is this, or what letter is this, or count to 5 for me, or how many is this. Or, that's just something that they don't do in the low-income homes. So those kids, when they enter kindergarten, are 2 or 3 years behind the families from, especially two-parent families, educated families. So we need to help put more funding into early childhood education to try to get those kids up on par by the time they start kindergarten. We need to do a lot of work in doing a better job of teacher preparation. Our College of Education haven't had an overhaul in probably 50 years. They're still teaching the same way they used to. Would a professor in your education department actually go out to a school and see what's going on? No, they're too busy doing research, trying to get a paper published. But some of the best papers they could publish would be on what's working in our schools, because we have a lot of innovative school districts where technology is being used. It would be good to get our deans of education to make their faculty go out and do some of this kind of groundbreaking research about what's going on in the field. But of course, like most deans, their faculty don't listen to them. So. Well, they're tenured. They don't have to listen, Nothing.
Zega's feeling very happy about all your comments about us, faculty members. So I think what you're really suggesting, Dr. Goodnight, is to do field experiments the way in which they were done 40 years ago in agriculture as well.
Sure.
And I think that would be quite useful.
Well, not so much even experiments, but just going out and seeing what is working. We've got test scores. We can look at the schools that are producing higher test scores and go out and see what it is they're doing. That would be a much better research, and then they could bring that back into the classroom at the university to help teachers. Help teachers understand data better. We do a lot of work in the U.S. with a growth model. A growth model measures, it's a mixed model that measures the expected growth of a child over the next year. It's based on that own child's past history of how much they've grown in each previous grade. And then what we do is forecast where they should be next year. Now, if they're above that forecast, that means the teacher has added more value than we would expect her to, or him to expect to. And if they're below that target, then there's some kind of a problem. It could be the teacher, it could be the curriculum. It could be the child has had a problem at home. But if all the children in that class are below their expected values, then there's a problem, and more than likely it's the teacher. So understanding these kind of measurements helps teachers become better teachers. So that's the sort of thing that needs to be taught. We need better math teachers. We need to emphasize the importance of teaching math in elementary school and in middle school. I can remember back almost, I think all three of my kids, they would have a math problem, and I said, well, let me help you with it, and I'd start to show them how it works. No, Dad, that's not how the teacher wants us to do it. The teacher was not a math major. She learned how to, or he learned how to do this problem one way and one way only, and the child is being forced to memorize how to do it that way, and it turns the kids off. Math is not a memorization game. You have to remember the 3 basic rules: commutative, associative, and distributed. That's all you need to know. Everything else is, you do anything you want to, as long as you uphold those 3 rules. And unfortunately, some of our teachers don't understand that. They just have memorized how to do something, and they expect the children to memorize how to do it as well.
One of the examples that a SAS employee gave to me when I was at your Cary campus a few days ago was what you're doing with Girl Scouts, where there is a whole process of these folks recording the visits that they've made to their neighbors, and then trying to keep tabs on who gave money, who didn't give money, looking at the return on response rates. And I think that way, trying to get these folks in school get excited about using simple, in fact, even simple arithmetic,
right,
and then moving it up one level.
Yeah.
And I think it's quite a remarkable program, as was described to me by one of your employees.
Well, we also have a program called Curriculum Pathways that we have developed. Thousands of assets that teachers can use in teaching. They're all online. We provide that free of charge. We have a programming course in SAS that we make available to high schools, so they can try to get some of the kids in high school interested in moving forward into computer science when they move forward. We've had over 260,000 downloads of our SAS University Edition, so it's a free copy of SAS, basically, that anybody can download for educational use. So I hope all your students have already downloaded that, so they've got it on their own machine. But I think you're one of 47 master's degree programs that we've helped to establish. So it's a world where we're trying to help meet the demand for analytical professionals.
Well, thank you for that. I think it's really only going to be met by partnerships with institutions like ours and companies like yours,
right,
and businesses that in fact also invest in it.